Senior counsel John Farmer established the timeline that day. He says by misleading the public to hide incompetence on September 11th, the U.S. government unwittingly triggered the truth movement.
I tell you where I have a degree of empathy, and that is, I think when you have a situation as we had here, where the official government version of what happened doesn't square with reality and leaves people scratching their heads, then people's minds run crazy. And,
all right, let's stop it right there.
Varying degrees.
Varying degrees, and then he starts saying how controlled demolition is not a possibility. Now, let's focus on what he did just say. He just said that the official government version of 9/11 does not square with reality. Is it time for a new investigation yet? Is it time for the mainstream media to stop slandering 9/11 truth yet? When John Farmer, the man who put together the timeline, admits it's a lie, it's a whitewash. We played segments of Fabled Enemies, my latest film on 9/11, on the Sunday show, where Max Cleland was forced to resign. He had to resign because they wouldn't even let him see the documents. This was a commissioner on the 9/11 report. He had to leave. John Farmer admits it's a lie. The two co-chairs, as they laugh, also in Fabled Enemies, Thomas Keane and Lee Hamilton, write a book together called Without Precedent, where they talk about indictments of the FBI and others, and they're joking about it. It's hilarious. Oh, yeah, of course they lied to us. All right, let's go to this next clip in that one right there. Can we hit that next clip? This is the CBC. Bob McEwen, who does a lot of journalism here in the United States, did a really fair piece called The Unofficial Story. So check this out.
Cell phone or seatback phone, he went back and forth. But he...
You guys are a minute off. It's a minute before that. It's 8 o'clock. It's 8 minutes. 8 minutes. Sorry about that, folks. That's that right there. He's describing the Barbara Olson phone calls. Now, what do we know about the Barbara Olson phone calls? Barbara Olson was a commentator on CNN. She supposedly called her husband, who was the Solicitor General at the time, twice from her cell phone, where she was the one that talked about hijackers with box cutters. That's where the only information comes out. So let's hit the clip.
Oh, okay. Now, does he usually say that to his mother? Probably not.
According to Dudney, it was a slip-up and clear proof the call wasn't from her son.
Have you been in touch with his mother?
No.
Her name's Alice Hoagland. And she says, in fact, that was one of the things that they would do on the phone. Just kidding. Because he was the up-and-coming young businessman.
Yeah,
and when he called her, she says, that's the way he sometimes introduced himself.
Well, then that just means that they've done a better job.
But here, too, there are unanswered questions. For instance, what's perhaps the most famous call that day? From television commentator Barbara Olson on board American Flight 77, headed to the Pentagon, to her husband Ted Olson, then Solicitor General of the U.S.
He told CNN that she had called him that morning from Flight 77, called him twice, talked to him for about a minute each time. He was uncertain whether it was cell phone or seatback phone. He went back and forth. But he said she reported that there were hijackers on the planes, and they were armed with knives and box cutters. The only reported call that mentioned box cutters. So that shows you how important these calls from Barbara Olson were, because everybody knows the hijackers had box cutters.
All right, let's stop it right there.
Unresolved issue.
You know, he looks at it and he says, well, that's true. That's true. She never did make those calls. In fact, play it right from there. Show him right now. Again, the FBI confirms those calls were never made. Hit it. Can we hit that spot?
Ted Olson told the FBI his wife phoned twice that morning. Calls lasting about a minute apiece. But in a 9/11 court case, FBI evidence was that Barbara Olson attempted just one phone call from Flight 77, which lasted 0 seconds.
You've only got two choices. Either Ted Olson was duped by fake calls, or he just made it up. He lied. Either way, the official story is based on a lie. And thus far, we have been unable to get a single newspaper or magazine or TV station in the United States to report this, which the FBI reported in 2006.
All right, let's pull that clip. Now, the next point we're going to be making, we're going to show you Jim Meigs of Popular Mechanics. All the quote-unquote debunkers or those who refuse to look at 9/11 truth always cite Popular Mechanics debunked that years ago. It doesn't matter if I went on national radio and television and debated the Popular Mechanics guys on the 5th anniversary of 9/11, owned them for an hour, disproved their lies. They're sticking to their stories. They're going to continue with their propaganda. In fact, I was supposed to be on later that day against them on Glenn Beck. We'd been booked for over 2 weeks. Of course, we got canceled, and Glenn Beck let Jim Meigs propagate his lies. So let's go to this portion of the clip from the CBC with Popular Mechanics and Jim Meigs.
But nothing more daunting than 9/11 and questions like, where was the Air Force? It is hard for mere laymen to understand how the biggest, most extensive military in the world could not have got fighters in the air that morning faster than it did.
You know, it's really interesting. The conspiracy theorists, one of the very common mistakes they make is what I call the myth of hypercompetence. They've seen too many movies. They have this idea that the minute a plane goes off course, 3, fighter jets are scrambled on its tail within seconds. It doesn't actually work that way. They're assuming that the air defenses were competent to fight this kind of threat. They weren't. They should have been better prepared for it. They should have thought about it. They should have trained for it.
But they do train for it. That's all they train for.
Not for planes originating inside the U.S. The air defense system was set up for outside threats, planes or missiles or other things coming in from overseas.
Yeah. All right, let's just stop him right there. Bob McEwen should have stopped him and said, that is a lie. In my hands, and hopefully you can zoom in on the document cam in the final moments of this segment, you can see clearly that on 10/21/2000, they had an inside hijacking. It's right there. Amalgam Virgo had an inside hijacking right there. These aren't outside threats. These originated in our country. Yet another lie from Popular Mechanics. Doesn't matter that they have the drill Amalgam Virgo with Bin Laden on the cover, and they're running a suicide mission to ram that plane into the Capitol building. We'll be back after this. It's the Alex Jones Show. Alex out on assignment. I'm Jason Bermas. PrisonPlanet.com, Infowars.net.